how to compose jazz walking bass lines in just 4 simple steps. Now, the reason why I use the word compose and not improvise or create is because composition comes before improvisation. They are essentially the same thing, improvisation and composition, but one is in the moment. With improvisation, you're essentially composing on the spot. So with that being said, the most effective way I've found to improve my ability to improvise walking bass lines, whether it's jazz or blues, was to first transcribe the greats, Ray Brown, Ron Carter, Paul Chambers, the list goes on of course, but then practicing composing walking bass lines by writing them out on a piece of paper. You can write these out in standard musical notation or tab, or you can do what one of my students does and writes them out like this, just as the note names. Now, there are a few guidelines to follow if you want to create strong sounding jazz walking bass lines. These are not rules, just guidelines to help you going if you're just getting into creating jazz walking bass lines. And I will say that all of this will depend on the context that you're playing in, but here are the 4 steps you can use to create simple but very effective walking lines. Let's take the jazz standard Autumn Leaves. Now take note that you can use this method on any jazz standard or a blues form even, just about any piece of music that you want to create a jazz walking bass line on. Let's start with step 1. So step 1 is first you need to write the root on beat 1 of each bar like this. Walking bass lines are defined by their quarter note pulse. So we're just going to play quarter notes on the first beat of each bar of the chord changes. So let's go through the chord changes quickly. So we have C minor, so we play a C. We have F7, play an F. B flat major 7, play a B flat. E flat major 7, E flat for 1 beat on beat 1. And then we have an A half diminished, so we can play the open A string if we like, or 5th fret of the E string. Then we have a D7 flat 13. Don't worry about the flat 13 and the 7s for now. We'll play a D there, right? So on beat 1, and then a G minor 6 you could say, and then you can do another G minor 6 here, or some people imply or even actually play and put it into the actual standard, a G7. Now step 2 is before we look at beats 2 and 3, let's start with beat 4. Now this is a bit unusual, but this has really helped my students. It sounds kind of backwards, right? But beat 4 is how we connect one chord to another. So on the 4th beat, you have 3 options. You can either write a half step above or below the root. Like here we have an E on beat 4, which goes chromatically up, like a half step up to the F. Another example is when we're on the A half diminished. On the 4th beat, we go from the E flat down a half step to the D, right? That's down 1 half step. So we're targeting the root of the next bar on the 4th beat of the previous bar, either a half step above or a half step below. The second option you have to play on the 4th beat of the bar is to play or write down, if you're writing out your walking bass line now, a note from the scale above or below the root of the next chord. So if that doesn't make sense, here's an example. So on the G minor 6 here, you can see I'm playing an F, which is the 7th of G minor 6, and it's going up to the G, which is the root of the next bar. And that is a scale note below the root of the next bar. Another example is in beat 2 on the F7, the 4th beat. I'm going from a C, which is the 5th note in the F7 scale, and I'm going down to the root of the next bar, the B flat. So that's a scale note from the F7 chord going down to the root of the next chord, which is B flat. And the third option you have on the 4th beat of the bar is to write the root of the chord that you're on, unless the root is the same. So let me show you another example of this. So in the 3rd bar on the B flat, major 7, on the 4th beat we have a B flat going to an E flat. So we're going root to root. So root to root. Another example is in the last bar, when it repeats and goes back to the top of the form, we're going from a G7. So on the G7 we're playing the root G on the 4th beat, and then we go back up to the top of the form and we play the root C on the C minor. So we go root to root. So that's the third option you can play on the fourth beat of the bar. And here's an example using a mixture of all three of these options. Now for step 3, we're going to select a chord tone, so root, third, fifth or seventh on beat 3, as beats 1 and beats 3 are the strong harmonic beats of the bar. So to get a strong sounding walking bass line, you ideally want to play a chord tone on beat 3 and then the root on beat 1. So in the first bar, I chose the third of C minor, which is an E flat, and that nicely leads to the E, which chromatically goes up by half steps to the F. On the F7, I chose the third, which is an A. On the B flat major 7, I chose the fifth, which is an F, but I could choose the third. It doesn't matter which chord tone you decide to use. I could even use the root and go root, root to the E flat there. And then on the E flat, on the third beat, I play the third, the G. On the A half diminished, I play the third, the C. On the D7, I play the A, which is the fifth. And on the G minor 6, I play the fifth, which is a D. And then on the G7 or G minor 6, depending on how you would like to play this chord progression, I also play the fifth on the third beat of the bar. It's cool to note that on major chords, you can use the sixth instead of the seventh, as the sixth on major chords generally sound quite nice as well. Before I move on to step 4, comment below with which jazz standard you'd like me to create a walking bass line on next. If you'd like more help on creating these walking bass lines and improvising great sounding jazz walking bass lines, then make sure to apply for the Bass Mastermind down below. Inside the Bass Mastermind, you'll be able to get one-to-one personalized feedback on your bass lines that you're creating. Now step 4 is to find a note that connects beats 1 and beats 3 together. A chord tone will always work, so you could just select the root, third, fifth and seventh, but try to avoid repeating notes. Repeating notes are not bad, and it just depends on the context you're really playing in. If you don't want to play a chord tone, then just take one of the notes from the scale and put that onto the second beat. So in the first bar, I have on beat 1 a C, and on beat 3 I have an E flat. So a nice note that connects those two notes is actually just walking up, so C, and then the second up the C minor scale is a D, so just walking up to the E flat. So the D will sound really nice on beat 2. So the whole first bar would sound like this: C, D, E flat, E, F. And then on the F7, I'm actually going to drop down to the F, the lower F this is, and that's a nice way of kind of just connecting and just outlining the F7 there. I'm just playing the F7 triad. And then on the third bar, the B flat major 7, I just chose a D, which is the third. So fifth, root to the E flat. And then I chose another chord tone. Chord tones will always work, by the way, on beat 2. B flat, G, B flat. That's the fourth bar. And then for the A half diminished, on beat 1 I'm playing an A, and on beat 3 I'm playing a C. So a nice note that will connect those two notes together that I can play on beat 2 would just be the second note of the A half diminished scale. So B flat, which is the second note, and then to the C. And then we go to the D7. Now a note that I could use here is just a chord tone, which is the 7th. So 7th on beat 2, which is a C here, and then A, F sharp, and then we have beat 1. The second beat, I'm playing a third of the G minor, which is a chord tone. So chord tone, third, D, fifth, 7th, and then we have a G7. I'm on the G here, and I need to go to the D. Now there's a few things I can do, but I decided to choose the 7th, just another chord tone, and then G, and back to the top. So that's the whole bass line that I composed using the 4-step formula that I taught you in this lesson. Here's how the bass line sounds in time with the backing track. Now you know which notes to play. Next, you need to know how to get a great jazz walking bass tone. As you saw, I was playing my P bass with the sponge. So if you're an electric player and you want to play jazz and get that double bass sound, click this video next. And in this video, I actually break down how to get an awesome double bass sound on electric bass. Click the video and I'll see you there.